Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Wichita and Kansas government and public policy. We're broadcast on KGPT channel 26.1, also its companion website, kgpt26.com. Some of you may know me for my blog, The Voice for Liberty. That's at wichitaliberty.org on the internet. There, the motto is individual liberty, limited government, and free markets in Wichita and Kansas. So I cover things that may not be covered by other news media in Wichita and Kansas, or if we do cover the same news, I'll do it from the perspective of economic freedom, limited government, and individual liberty, because these are the things that are important, and these are the same things that are often under attack by our government, be it at the federal, state, or local level. So, please visit wichitaliberty.org. You can subscribe to the email newsletter I send a few times a week. Like The Voice for Liberty on Facebook. Follow me, Bob Weeks, on Twitter. And if you'd like to contact me, my email address is easy to remember, bob.weeks@gmail.com. Well, this spring we're having elections in cities and school boards in Kansas, so I thought this would be a good time to make sure we understand the structure and operation of Wichita city government. Now, the city is divided into 6 districts, and each district is represented by a council member. Their terms are 4 years, and council members are limited by law to 2 full terms. City council members earn about $35,000 a year. And I have to say about because, surprisingly, there's nowhere that I can find that states exactly what the salary is, at least nowhere that can be easily found. The mayor is elected by the entire city. The term is 4 years again, with a limit of 2 terms. The mayor presides over the city council meetings and signs documents on behalf of the city. But the mayor's vote counts the same as a council member's vote. And the mayor's salary is about $83,000 per year. And generally, it's expected that the council member positions are part-time jobs, and many council members have other jobs or businesses that they run. The mayor, though, is expected to work full-time representing the city. The city council meets in the council chambers in City Hall most Tuesdays at 9 a.m., although sometimes meetings start at 9:30, so it's always best to check the agenda. The council won't meet the Tuesday after a Monday holiday, and it also won't meet on the 5th Tuesday of a month. And the 4th meeting of a month is usually a consent agenda items only meeting and perhaps a workshop as well. Now, city council meetings are broadcast live on Cox Cable TV Channel 7, but not broadcast over the air, as is KGPT TV that you're watching right now. But the meetings are streamed live over the internet, and recently the city upgraded its meeting software and so that the live and archived video is much more accessible than it had been, even using mobile devices like smartphones. There is free wireless networking in the council chamber if you attend a meeting. Now, the council also holds many workshops, which are more informal meetings. No ordinances are voted on at workshops. These are also open to the public and broadcast on Cable Channel 7. Now, the council meeting agenda is an important document that lays out the matters to be considered at each meeting. The agendas are usually available on Thursday or Friday, but sometimes not until Monday, the day before the council meeting. And sometimes when an agenda is published on Thursday or Friday, it will then be revised on Monday, sometimes late in the day. These agendas can be found at the city's website, wichita.gov, under the City Council section. Now, the agenda document is a single PDF file, but it contains 2 parts in addition to a table of contents. And the first part is what we commonly think of as the agenda to the meeting. It's usually about 2, maybe 6 pages long, and it describes each item only briefly, usually in just 1 sentence. And you'll find printed copies of this part of the agenda available on a table outside council chambers. But following that is the detailed information for the agenda items. Sometimes you'll hear council members refer to the green sheets or the packet. And it is not uncommon for there to be over 500 pages of this material. And it's here in this material that you can learn much of what you need to know in order to be able to talk about an item on the City Council agenda. Then, several days after a council meeting, the clerk publishes City Council meeting minutes. These are abbreviated descriptions of the proceedings, although in recent years the minutes have become more complete. So, what happens at these council meetings? Well, a variety of things, such as a prayer, pledging allegiance to the flag, making proclamations, issuing awards, and approving of minutes, hearing speakers on the public agenda, and other miscellaneous items. But the important thing the council does is to make laws. The laws that the City Council passes are called ordinances. So, what can you do to influence the ordinances that the City Council creates? Well, there are three main ways that you can speak to the mayor and members of the council at a City Council meeting. There's first the public agenda. There are also public hearings, and then there are regular agenda items. Now, near the beginning of each meeting is what we call, and I've referred to as the public agenda, and this is where the public may address the council on any topic, although there are a few restricted topics such as personnel matters. And you do have to request to appear on the agenda in advance, a week in advance, in fact, before the meeting. You make this request to the city clerk. You can do that by email. The time limit when you speak on the public agenda is 5 minutes, and you can't appear more than once every 4 weeks. The city clerk will ask for the topic of your talk, and that will be printed in the agenda. Now, after you speak on the public agenda, one of two things may happen. If what you said is agreeable to council members, you may be praised. Otherwise, nothing will happen, or the city council members may ask you questions. Now, some items on a city council agenda might be labeled as a public hearing. Certain types of ordinances, such as issuing industrial revenue bonds, require a public hearing. The purpose of these, as you might imagine, is to get input from the public. So you will be allowed to speak when this item is considered. There is no need to sign up to speak in advance of the meeting. Just go to the meeting, and at some time the mayor will ask if there are members of the public who would like to speak, and all you have to do at that time is to stand up and walk down the aisle to the podium. Well, except some issues at public hearings draw many people who wish to speak, and in these uncommon cases the council may limit the number of speakers and sometimes may impose a limit on those speakers for an item and those speaking against an item. Now, usually during a public hearing, the time limit for a speaker is 5 minutes, although sometimes the council votes to reduce the amount of time if it appears there are a large number of people wanting to speak. Then, for most agenda items that are not a public hearing, a city staff member presents the item to the city council, and at some time the mayor will usually ask if anyone from the public wants to speak on the item. And again, there's no need to sign up in advance to speak in this way, and after speaking, the council members might ask you questions. And in any case, if you speak at a city council meeting, your remarks might be reported in the newspaper or on radio or television. And it's also possible that a member of the media might ask you some more questions, even on camera. Generally, they'll ask to step aside out of the chambers and into the lobby so as not to disturb the meeting. Now, it's important to have all of your facts absolutely correct before speaking to the city council. If you make mistakes, council members that are opposed to the position you're taking, well, they may take delight in pointing out your errors. This is especially true after you've spoken more than a few times to the council. Now, another thing to know about the Wichita City Council is that it uses what's known as a consent agenda, and sometimes there may be several consent agendas in a single meeting. Now, the consent agenda is a grouping of items that will be considered as a group and voted on as a group. It's a way to dispose of a lot of items in bulk. The mayor will ask the clerk to announce the consent agenda, and if no council member wants to poll an item, the council will vote. And if the vote passes, each item contained in the consent agenda passes too. Now, polling an item from a consent agenda means that a council member wishes the item to be considered separately on its own. Sometimes this is done so that there may be a discussion on the item and then a vote with each council member's vote on the record. Or sometimes the council member wants to delay the item until a future meeting. Now, generally items on a consent agenda are thought to be routine and non-controversial, and that's why they're considered in bulk without discussion. It saves time. But sometimes important or controversial matters are on the consent agenda, so it pays to read through it. Now, you might be wondering, who really controls what happens at city council meetings? And that's a good question. We have a form of government in Wichita with a strong city manager. It's called a council manager form of government. It's thought that this form of government removes politics and brings in a professional form of management to city government. So in Wichita, the city manager, Robert Layton, is at the top of a pyramid of city hall bureaucrats who report to him, not to the city council. The manager was hired by the council and ultimately works at the pleasure of the council. Generally, I would say there seems to be broad agreement between the council and manager on most matters, although once in a while the council will disagree with or even criticize the manager in meetings. But I can't really answer the question as to who is in control. And I think the parties involved like it that way. More than one council member has told me personally, or has said in public, that the council is like a board of directors. The council just sets policy based on information they're given by staff, and then the manager and his staff carry out the policy. The manager, on the other hand, often asks the council for direction as to what to do. I think it's a system that allows for finger-pointing when things go wrong. Now, some cities have a strong mayor form of government. In those cities, the mayor has much more power. The mayor hires and fires staff. Now, the mayor may appoint a chief of staff, sometimes even called a city manager, but the role there is different. In this form of government, there is much more power in the hands of mayor and correspondingly more accountability. When things go wrong, there is little question who shoulders the blame and who must accept responsibility. In some cities, the mayor is even in charge of the public schools. That's certainly not the case in Wichita. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks. I mentioned there are city elections coming up. Here's the calendar. The filing deadline for city offices is Monday, January 27th at noon. And the filing fees are modest, just $45 for Wichita City offices. This information is available at the Sedgwick County Election Office. Just use Google to find it, and once there you'll find a link titled Candidate Information. That office also has information on the various reports you'll need to file. The most important reports are probably campaign finance reports that tell how much money candidates have raised and from whom. Also, how that money is being spent. It's important that candidates file these reports correctly and on time. Otherwise, opponents will make hay of it, and the campaign could be fined. In city elections in Kansas and school board elections too, candidates run in nonpartisan elections. That means that candidates are not identified as Democrats, Republicans, or Libertarians on ballots. Instead, any number of candidates run in what's called a jungle primary. The top 2 vote-getters then advance to the general election. The primary election this year is Tuesday, March 3rd, and the general election is Tuesday, April 7th. So, how can you get involved? Well, certainly you can be a candidate, and the filing deadline is still in the future on January 27th. But if you have not been laying the groundwork for a campaign, it's probably a little late to get involved as a candidate. But there is still much important work you can do. First, find out who are the candidates for offices. Now, we have a lot of offices up for election this year. There will be a new mayor, as Carl Brewer is blocked from running due to our term limit laws. So too is Jeff Longwell, who represents West and Northwest Wichita in the council, although he is running for mayor. Jeff Bluebaugh must run. He represents District 4, South and Southwest Wichita. And so too must Pete Meitzner run. He represents District 2, which is East Wichita. Now, the Sedgwick County Election Office will have the names and addresses of candidates who have filed, and using those names, you should be able to find campaign websites for the candidates by using Google. Or most campaigns will have a Facebook page for the candidate. And the Wichita Eagle will likely carry profiles of candidates after the filing deadline. Now, if you see a candidate that you like, contact the candidate. Ask questions. Remember that usually websites and printed materials contain a lot of pablum, fluff if you will. Did you know that everyone is in favor of spending taxpayer money responsibly, and everyone's opposed to wasting government money? Who could have figured? So you need to ask a few questions that will elucidate what the candidates really believe. I would suggest a few questions on the pay-to-play issue, such as, do you think council members should be prohibited from voting to enrich their significant campaign contributors? Ask candidates if they would propose such a law, or would they vote in favor of it? You might also ask important questions about government transparency, such as, do you think the Wichita Downtown Development Corporation should release its records of the spending of taxpayer money as the Kansas Open Record Act requires? Another good question is this: how did you vote on the proposed Wichita sales tax last year? You can also ask candidates' opinion of the job that current office holders are doing. So I think a good question would be to ask about retiring Mayor Carl Brewer. Do you agree with the things he has done or not? And do you have specific examples of things with which you agree or disagree that the mayor has done? Ask about issues the city will likely have to deal with in the near future, such as, what do you think Wichita should do about future water supply requirements? Or if the Wichita Transit System says it will cut bus service on some routes, what do you think should be the city's response? Well, here are a few issues from the city's legislative agenda. One is the Wichita City Council is in favor of granting discounts on property taxes to arts-related businesses that are located in specific districts. How do you feel about that? This will give you a feel for the candidate's attitude about the desirability of city planning of the economy and how the candidate feels about the city granting special favors to special groups of people. Well, here's a question. Do you think the city should be able to grant driving permits to undocumented immigrants? No matter how you feel about immigration, this will let you know about the candidate's feelings. Here's another question to ask. Do you think the city should continue its efforts to bring Amtrak passenger rail service to Wichita? And if a candidate answers yes, ask if they are aware of how expensive passenger rail is and how much taxpayer subsidy is required. You might ask a candidate, what do you think the city should do about Uber? Should the city protect existing taxicab companies from Uber? This will let you learn about the candidate's attitudes towards regulation and free markets. You might ask, do you know if the number of flights available at the Wichita airport has been rising or declining? This is a test of basic knowledge. The city says the number of flights has been rising, but this is false considering the past few years. Several years ago, the city decided that citizens could no longer park in the garage attached to City Hall. How do you feel about that, candidate? Here's something else related to customer service and the city's attitude towards its citizens. The city now charges $1 to pay your water bill online using either a credit card or direct withdrawal from a checking account. How do you feel about that? You might ask, have you read the most recent Performance Measures Report? Comprehensive Annual Financial Report? Have you read the city's budget? And do you think the city's budget should be presented in 2 volumes instead of 3? This will test whether the candidate has spent time studying city issues. And here's a question. When the city issues industrial revenue bonds, do you think the city should no longer guarantee the repayment of the bonds? Well, this is a trick question. Its premise is false. The city does not guarantee the repayment of industrial revenue bonds. So this will let you know about the candidate's level of knowledge of an important and frequently used economic development incentive. And by the way, the city budget is presented in 2 volumes, not 3, as I alluded to earlier. You know, sometimes candidates are so willing to say whatever they think voters want to hear, I don't think it's out of bounds to try to trip them up once in a while. Now, most of these questions are related to issues the city has dealt with recently. If a candidate does not have an answer for some of these, or even if a candidate answers some questions differently from your preference, well, I wouldn't automatically rule out supporting the candidate. But I urge you to be careful and skeptical. Candidates who do not know much about city government, especially if they are ambitious and really want to be in office, well, these are the candidates most desired by Wichita's cronies. The cronies, remember, are the people who want stuff from City Hall that you have to pay for. The cronies make generous campaign contributions to candidates who will vote to give them stuff. If candidates like this win office, the cronies in the city will seek to rapidly indoctrinate the new office holder about the goodness of city government. The cronies may pay off their past campaign debts. The city will do things like send the new members on junkets. Perhaps the council will elevate the new office holders to positions like vice mayor in rapid fashion. This usually leads to the office holder going native, we say, and becoming part of the establishment. So you have to be skeptical. Well, after you find candidates that you like, there are a few things you can do to help out. First, if you can donate money, that's great. But you need to donate quickly. The campaign contributions that arrive early in a campaign are much more important than money that arrives late in a campaign. Often when campaigns receive funds right before an election, well, there's really very little ways to spend it wisely, so the money is sometimes wasted. So early donations are better. And you don't have to donate a lot to make a difference, especially in council member elections. Then, volunteer. Campaigns, if they're organized, Well, they're going to need volunteers. And there are many things that you can do. About the most valuable thing you can do is to walk door to door distributing campaign literature and talking to voters. If a campaign is well organized, it will have lists of likely voters for you to use to visit. Nowadays, though, these walking lists are often implemented through smartphone or tablet apps that direct you where to go next. It's important that these door walking efforts be organized and managed. That's because very few people vote in city elections, especially the primary elections. So these voter outreach efforts must be managed to reach the likely voters. Otherwise, much time and effort will be wasted on contacting people who are unlikely to vote. So if you're helping out on an organized campaign that targets only likely voters, you'll be surprised at how few people vote. Especially in the primary elections, you might skip 4, 5, 6, or even more houses before reaching the next house that holds likely voters. Now, I understand that many people don't like to walk door to door and talk to voters. It's a little intimidating at first, but after getting started, many people like it. Remember, the campaign should have you going only to homes where there are regular voters. So many of the people you will talk to are more interested in government and politics than the average person. But if you don't want to do this, there are still many other things that you can do. Campaigns do literature drops, which is distributing campaign literature to homes without talking to voters. Campaigns do phone calling, where you call likely voters and talk to them about the candidate. You might be surprised how much effort it takes to deliver yard signs and make sure they remain in place. So campaigns need people to help out with that. There may also be clerical tasks to do, like the stuffing of envelopes. And if you're on social media like Facebook, well, that's a great way to tell people about the candidates you favor. So there are many things you can do to help candidates in the elections. And remember that the turnout in these city elections, especially the primary election, is so small that even little things can make a big difference. In the spring primary election in 2013, 2 years ago, only 4,276 people voted. And in the general election that year, 17,000 people voted. So no matter where you fit along the political spectrum, your efforts can make a difference in city and school board elections. And remember, as we know, there are people who are intensely interested in these elections, especially local elections, because they want stuff from City Hall or the County Commission, and they want you to pay for it. But these people can be defeated. The victories by Richard Ranzoff for County Commission over candidates supported by the cronies, including the Wichita Metro Chamber of Commerce, is an example. So become informed, make a decision about candidates you like, and help them out as you can. And, of course, vote for them. Remember, if you don't make a decision, someone else will make it for you. Well, thanks for watching Wichita Liberty TV this week. I'm Bob Weeks.